Well, the world's 10 wealthiest men doubled their fortunes during the first 2 years of the pandemic as poverty and inequality soared.
10-figure club is bigger and richer than ever. There are now 2,781 billionaires around the world.
The rich would have us believe that they are geniuses and people to look up to.
Are you sincerely trying to save the world?
Well, I'm trying to do good things, yeah.
They are adored by governments across the world and achieve respect through wealth. They want us to believe that there is something special about them, that there is something unique about them. Internet gurus use them as examples of how to be successful and tell us that there is a secret formula that we need to learn to become wealthy. They would tell us that the problem is with us and that we just need to change our mindset to change our fortune. But those self-help books, online courses and LinkedIn posts won't help us to learn their secrets. There are in fact just 3 things that the wealthy do to become rich and stay rich. The richest men in the United States include Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Larry Ellison, Warren Buffett and Bill Gates. The internet is full of advice as to how to get rich like Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos, but I'm going to explain why we will never be like them. Because the richest men in the world are not like most of us, even if they pretend they are. They were given opportunities few of us will ever get.
Whoa! I just got invited to give the commencement address at Harvard this year.
That's amazing.
I remember you did it 10 years ago when Priscilla graduated. I was there.
Jeff Bezos went to Princeton University, the 6th best university in the world. He apparently had a GPA of 4.2 and graduated from Princeton with a Bachelor of Science in Engineering. He initially majored in physics, but later switched to electrical engineering and computer science. Bill Gates went to private prep school and was writing computer programs as a teenager. He enrolled at Harvard College, a private Ivy League college, and he could afford to drop out of college. Warren Buffett went to an Ivy League business school and gained a Master of Science in Economics. We simply cannot become rich by copying these people because they have had opportunities that we never had and we will never have. Waking up at 5 a.m. or learning how to use Notion to become more productive, whatever that means, is not enough to get rich. So what exactly are the key things to generating wealth and becoming rich like the richest men in the world? Here are the 3 things that you need to do. 1. Form a relationship with the government. 2. Before you put your hand in your pocket, get someone else to pay. 3. If you must pay, pay with as little tax as possible. Let's break each of these down and give you examples of how to use each of these techniques in your everyday life. There are 2 main ways to create a formal relationship with the government to our benefit. The first is through a contract for goods or services for which the government will pay us. The second way is by getting subsidies from the government for the things that we may have done anyway. Let's take each of those in turn. Behind each of those men mentioned at the beginning of the video lies a company that has contracted with the government. Companies such as Google, Amazon, Oracle, Microsoft and Facebook have all provided services to the government. These contracts can be so lucrative that the gloves can come off and the companies will fight each other.
This is a court challenge over the $10 billion federal cloud computing contract known as JEDI.
A good example of this occurred when the US government tendered for its Joint Enterprise Defense Infrastructure, JEDI, contract. This was a large cloud computing contract for the US Department of Defense and had a value of $10 billion over 10 years. Some companies that were interested in the contract included Amazon and Microsoft. Google had been in the running, but pulled out of the tender process due to protests from its employees. Long story short, Microsoft was awarded the contract, but Amazon challenged that award through a court process.
The Defense Department awarded the project to Microsoft last month, and on Friday, Amazon filed a preliminary notice in the U.S. Court of Federal Claims over that outcome.
At the time, Donald Trump was president of the United States, and there was animosity between him and Jeff Bezos, and the suggestion was Amazon was not awarded the contract due to that animosity.
How do you feel about the president going after Amazon?
The president can take to Twitter and say whatever it is that he wants. I agree with you that he probably has a personal vendetta against Jeff Bezos, which is why he's targeting them.
The Microsoft JEDI contract was stopped by the courts, and because of that decision, the US Department of Defense had to go back out to tender. Eventually, the JEDI contract was cancelled and replaced with something called Joint Warfighter Cloud Capability. That contract was awarded to Amazon, Google, Microsoft and Oracle, and is worth up to $9 billion. In 2021, 3 activist groups produced a report called Big Tech Sells War and discovered that at least $44.5 billion had been awarded to tech companies such as Amazon, Google and Microsoft. So while these tech companies produce their lovely adverts selling us their products, a substantial amount of their profits are generated by contracting with the government. But why are they contracting with the government given that these companies are so well known to the public? It's simply because government contracts hit the sweet spot of being really lucrative and poorly managed. There are so many stories of governments mismanaging publicly procured contracts. Even when those contracts are awarded successfully, government employees do not have the time, resources, and perhaps even the skill set to manage contracts effectively. Government employees are too busy doing the day job rather than checking key performance indicators contained in contracts, and even if there is poor performance, they find that they do not have the leverage to change things quickly enough. In August 2023, The Guardian reported that there had been a sharp rise in the number of outsourced government services that were failing to meet the required standards. Such contracts included those relating to publicly sensitive matters such as asylum seekers and education of young offenders. Within the space of a year, there had been a 73% rise in the number of contractors providing work judged to be either inadequate or requires improvement. One of those contractors must have included the housing contractors for the UK's Ministry of Defence, because in October 2022, it was reported that army families were living in accommodation which was squalid and sometimes even dangerous. That contract was only 6 months old and had a total value of £650 million. It is extremely lucrative to contract with the government, and it even draws in companies that are not even based within the same country. Between 2014 and 2019, the UK government entered into contracts of the value of £37.5 million with companies that were based in one of 27 tax havens across the world. So what does this mean for us? Well, it means that if we want to become rich, we best win contracts that come up for tender. This doesn't have to be national government, but it can include contracting with local authorities. It is easier to contract on terms that are more favourable for us than if we were trying to contract with a private organisation. So we could win contracts to provide transport for kids to get to school, or contracts to maintain the gardens of a care home. But whatever it is, expand your mind, because you can get richer quicker by winning public contracts. You don't just have to win contracts to get rich through the government. The other way is to obtain subsidies. Of course, men like Elon Musk will make out that they are self-made millionaires. However, as far back as 2015, Elon Musk's companies Tesla, SolarCity and SpaceX benefited from an estimated $4.9 billion in government support. And a Los Angeles Times article quoted an analyst from Jefferies Equity Research who said, "He definitely goes where there is government money." That $4.9 billion was said to have been made up of government incentives, including grants, tax breaks, factory construction, discounted loans, and environmental credits that Tesla can sell. It also included tax credits and rebates to buyers of solar panels and electric cars. And it's not just in America, because it also happens on the other side of the pond. In 2020, it was reported that Wall Street was unhappy that the European Central Bank was used to support Mr. Arnott, chief executive of LVMH, to purchase Tiffany & Co. The UK government was also said to be subsidising the research and development costs of weapons companies at a rate of up to 90%. This was even though those companies were paying out dividends to their shareholders. So what does this mean for us? Well, it means that we need to make sure that we get ours. Make sure that we claim every single government benefit that we legitimately can. It means claiming every tax credit, every government benefit, and every government grant that we can. Because this is what the rich do. They squeeze the government for as much as they can. We have now created a revenue stream from the government, but how do we reduce the money that leaves our pockets? Well, we get somebody else to pay. The rich always get someone else to pay. In July 2019, Boris Johnson became Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, and he remained there until September 2022.
I have just been to see Her Majesty the Queen, who has invited me to form a government, and I have accepted.
Boris and his wife, Carrie, decided to renovate their private residence, which was a flat above 11 Downing Street, right next door to his official residence of 10 Downing Street. The Prime Minister has an unofficial annual public grant of £30,000, which they can use for their residence, but because Boris Johnson and his wife really did not like the decor in the flat, they decided to spend £112,000. And although they decided to spend that amount, it was actually paid for by Lord Brownlow, with £52,000 being paid by Huntswood Associates Limited and £60,000 being paid directly to suppliers. But it wasn't just the refurbishment that was covered by other individuals for Boris Johnson. He's also had a £15,000 holiday paid by others. It would, however, be unfair to single out Boris Johnson for this sort of thing. In 2009, the United Kingdom was rocked by parliamentary expenses scandal. It was discovered that there had been the widespread misuse of allowances and expenses, with an attempt to have the British taxpayer cover the costs of a range of things. It was discovered that members of parliament were getting the taxpayer to subsidise property development, cover the cost of council tax, having their furniture paid for, overclaiming for food, and exploiting the no receipt rule. But it's not just politicians who try to get others to pay for them. In October 2017, 238 proposals were made to Amazon by American cities wishing to become the location of its second corporate headquarters. Intereconomic states that the second corporate headquarters, called HQ2, would eventually employ 50,000 workers with an average salary of $100,000. That would be an investment into the city of about $5 billion a year. According to BuzzFeed News, some of the incentives offered to Amazon included the creation of a state university affiliated education program for company employees, an exclusive lounge for Amazon executives at the Atlanta airport, and the addition of one extra car on the Atlanta train system for the distribution of products around the city. It was estimated that Atlanta was offering tax incentives of $1.7 billion to Amazon. If you think that is a lot, Chicago was willing to offer up to $2.25 billion in incentives by way of tax credits and infrastructure improvements. Chicago even paid for William Shatner to narrate its proposal video. Pennsylvania went a bit further. It offered $4.6 billion in financial assistance, some of which would have been paid for by the personal income tax collected from the Amazon employees themselves, which means that the tax dollars of those Amazon employees would have funded HQ2. The ultimate winner was Northern Virginia, which had offered some performance-based incentives. These included a workforce cash grant of $550 million for the first 25,000 jobs Amazon created, with a salary of $150,000, and then an additional $200 million for the next 12,850 qualifying jobs. So essentially, Amazon, one of the world's biggest companies, has had its expansion plans paid for by the American taxpayer. The spending of your own money is an illusion. We will see celebrities at award shows wearing expensive clothing and expensive jewellery. However, these items are not paid for by the celebrity themselves, but rather they are loaned to them in the hope that they will receive publicity. Consider it as a one-time sponsorship deal. How do we apply these tricks for our benefit? For every employee out there, whatever we need, we must try to get our employer to pay for it. Squeeze the employee perks for as much as we can. Want to learn a new skill? Get our employer to pay for it. Across the West, employers will pay for our qualifications that we can then use to add value to our resumes. But it doesn't just stop there. We can get our school fees paid for, our dental plans, health insurance, gym membership, company car, and so on. Look at all the benefits the employer offers and ask yourself, can I get them to pay for the things that I want? Because remember, every CEO is an employee of the company, just like us. But what if we cannot get them to pay for those items? What if we must pay for these things ourselves? Well, just like the rich, if we must pay for the things, we should do so by paying as little tax as possible. It's well known that we are taxed when we earn money, taxed when we spend money, then taxed for living day to day. The rich use a range of complicated financial arrangements, including the payment of monies into trust funds, which are then used to pay for items. These arrangements are always being checked by tax authorities, but the long and short of it is that the money is paid over to the recipients with as little tax as possible. For wealthy business owners, they take a nominal salary but generate most of their money through the payment of dividends. Many countries tax stock dividends at a lower rate than the income tax rate. For example, in the UK, the business asset disposal relief means a 10% capital gains tax rate instead of normal rates of 20%. Business owners have been known to use the buy, borrow and die method of using their money. So either they buy the assets or have assets which they borrow against and pay the loan off bit by bit until they die. However, most of us don't have net assets of at least $1 million to make buy, borrow and die beneficial.
Was it as easy as it looked?
No, sir. No, sir, it wasn't.
So what we can do is use salary sacrifice, where we can exchange our entitlement to cash in return for a non-cash benefit. There are a range of salary sacrifices that are exempt from tax, including 401k payments or pension payments in the UK. In the US, it includes the use of a company car or additional vacation days. Using salary sacrifice reduces your tax burden and can mean that your taxable income falls below the threshold for a higher tax rate. And the money the taxman doesn't have is the money that we have to live the lifestyle we want. So now you know how the rich become rich and stay rich. Thank you for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe.